The Berks County Trust Company was organized in October of 1900 at a meeting of capitalists, and their stock was $125,000. In 2023, that would equate to a little over $4.5 million. They were chartered just a month later on November 16, 1900, and they began business in January of 1901. They arranged to rent J.K. Grant's new structure at the southeast corner of 6th and Washington Street. They occupied that property for nearly a decade before they gained the resources to build their own. It was announced on January 12, 1910, that two properties were purchased between Court and Washington on 6th Street for $48,000, and building construction was estimated to cost $250,000. So what exactly is a trust company? You probably have gotten the gist that it's a banking institution, but a trust company specifically is a more legal entity. It acts as a fiduciary, an agent, or a trustee on behalf of a person or business for the purpose of administration, management, and the eventual transfer of assets to a beneficial party. In addition to typical banking practices, they also handled a lot of estate stuff. Due to more people in the middle class accumulating wealth in the industrial era, this was a relatively new service that was necessary when people passed away. The May 6, 1911 Reading Times reported that the safe is a massive structure, its weight being about 40 tons. The door, which is circular, is about 2.5 feet in thickness and 7 feet high and is fitted with a time clock. The safe is about 18 feet deep and about 8 feet wide and is provided with many private boxes as well as receptacles for the company's cash and valuables. The steel door is highly polished, as are also the inner two doors, the whole forming a thoroughly fire and burglar-proof vault. The safe was manufactured by the York Lock and Safe Company. The vault is the only of its kind in the city. The mechanism controlling the locks is covered by a plate of glass window. The interior of the vault is illuminated with electric lights and the floor is tiled in white. There are over 600 safety deposit boxes in the vault. The business opened in this structure on Wednesday, May 10, 1911. In 1912, the very first weather station in Reading and Berks County was established on the roof of this building. It was one of only 50 in the entire country, with some of the other locations being the likes of New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia. By 1921, the institution had doubled its capital to $500,000, and they needed to expand. In 1923, an addition was constructed to the original frontage, making the building twice its original size. Also at this time, they had their first merger with the Schuylkill Trust Company. By 1940, there were 4 locations. In addition to this one, there was one at 5th and Penn, 9th and Spring, and Lancaster Ave and Noble Streets. In 1964, a large mid-century modern addition was added to the building, and the Berks County Trust Company changed its name to the American and Trust Company of Pennsylvania to reflect the regional scope in which it now provided service. Between 1953 and 1983, the bank had acquired over 20 financial institutions and expanded into 8 counties in southeastern Pennsylvania. In 1983, they merged with Central Penn and changed their name to Meridian Bancorp Incorporated, in which American and Central Penn National were designated wholly owned subsidiaries. upon formation assets of $3.6 billion and deposits of $2.9 billion. Meridian continued to grow through the 80s and into the 1990s, but they sold the property in 1997 to Pomeroy's Associates LP. You see, Meridian was going to build their new headquarters at the site of the old Pomeroy's building at 6th and Penn Streets. However, things fell apart shortly after the building was completed. Around that same time, Meridian reorganized and lots of locals lost their jobs and were laid off. From Pomeroy's Associates, it was sold to various development companies and eventually the Greater Reading Corporate Center in 2007. But this building found itself abandoned by the late 2010s. It was purchased in 2019 by Shuman Development Group, and for the last 2 years, he has been redeveloping, and that is the scenes you're looking at. I was here in March and got some views of them working on the inside, and all of that flooring you just saw is going to be laid in this area. The main banking room that we're looking at is eventually going to be full of food vendors who are going to be selling their goods, and there's going to be places to sit and eat. So if you're ever down at the courthouse or around 6th and Court, come check it out and get lunch. The second story of this building is commercial space and is leased out, and the upper floors are residential apartments. Having the benefit of being able to see how this banking institution's story played out, let's go back to 1910 again. For context, remember that the progressive era was in full swing. In the nation's growing industrial cities, in which Reading most certainly was, factory output grew, small businesses flourished, and incomes rose. These banking institutions benefited greatly from that prosperity. I'm going to close you out with an excerpt from an August 4th, 1910 Reading Times article. The article was about the rising value of real estate due to this prosperity, and it looked to the Berks County Trust Co building as an example of what the city's potential could be. 113 years ago, the author wrote, "We refer to the new banking house of the Berks County Trust Company, now in the course of erection. The foundation, which is now about complete, has been so constructed by the use of concrete and steel that it is one solid piece of stone, a great rectangular monolith weighing hundreds of tons, covering the whole area of the building so as to distribute the weight of the superstructure evenly over the whole space. Upon this base there is to arise a structure corresponding with it in strength and solidarity. The officers of the company realize just what should be obvious to everyone, that Reading is going to be growing and doing business for generations to come, and that it pays to prepare for that business with a building that will be lasting and adequate to its purposes, not only in the immediate present, but in the distant future."